Welcome to the Work From Home Milspo Movement podcast, a place where we are meeting military spouses where they are at and providing real solutions to military spouse employment. My name is Lauren Lonsdale, and I am a 16-year Marine Corps spouse. I'm the owner of a creative marketing firm and the instructor behind the Work From Home Milspo courses, which teach military spouses skills to become creative marketing virtual assistants. I am here to provide insight into creating and growing your work from home career, either as a military spouse creative marketing assistant, entrepreneur, or remote employee. Join us as we create a movement towards better solutions for military spouse employment, combat financial insecurities for military families, and work to increase service member retention by helping increase the betterment of military spouse and military family mental health. Hey everyone, Lauren, the Work From Home Milspo here with you today with another episode of the Work From Home Milspo movement. Today's going to be kind of a vulnerable episode rather. Today we're going to be talking about how I, as a military spouse, brand new mom, felt like I was losing my identity. I was no longer Lauren. I was Evelyn's mom, and at the time, captain, second lieutenant, first lieutenant, second lieutenant, no, first lieutenant, Captain Lonsdale's wife. Just being that and not being me. Growing up, I always thought I would work. My mom worked. She was a teacher and then a principal. I didn't have a traditional stay-at-home mom. I didn't consider myself wanting to be a stay-at-home mom. But because of the military lifestyle, I have my master's in education. I found that being a teacher just wasn't going to be feasible. So we made the decision that I would be a stay-at-home mom. And I quickly realized that that was not for me. And I was losing my identity. But like most of us, I struggled with, do I work outside the home and put my kids in daycare? I didn't really want to do that. But also, how do I do something where I can be at home with my kids, but also have this purpose, have this self-identity. For me, looking for a career was not necessarily the financial side of it. I wasn't looking to make a boatload of money or to, um, adding income to our family was important because we had a growing family, but it wasn't just the finances. For me, my biggest draw to looking for a work from home career or opportunity was to find my own identity again after becoming a new mom and becoming a military spouse. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to start off with telling you about my experience as being a new mom, a deployment with a brand new baby, just 3 months old, and being by myself across the country from the rest of my family. And then about my desire for more, why I wanted something other than just being a military spouse and just being a mom, and how I realized I needed the flexibility to be home, a flexible schedule, something that could PCS with us, and how I found that. And then really taking the leap from just doing this part-time to, oh my gosh, this is like a real business. This is a real career. And then identifying how that really can help other military spouses, which encouraged me and inspired me to start the Work From Home Milspo, and just kind of dive into going from I'm just Evelyn's mom and, whatever he was at the time, Captain Lonsdale's wife, to being I'm Lauren. I'm a business owner. I am a web designer. I do all of these things. And how great that has been for me to have a fulfilling and happy military life versus being resentful for the past 16 years. Okay, so back in 2011, my daughter was born in October. My husband left in January of 2012 for an 8-month deployment to Afghanistan. We were living in California. The rest of my family lives in Virginia, so we were completely opposite ends of the country. I made the decision to stay in California. I didn't want to go back to, live with my parents or do any of that. I thought it was important that we established our life in California. But at the same time, I was a first-time mom. I didn't really know what I was doing. There were so many things that were new to me with sleep regressions, and I was nursing and, how to get her to not do the sleep reflex, and she would wake up all the time. And it was brutal. It was really, really hard. On top of that, my husband's across the world and I can't get a hold of him when I need him. And I'm spiraling some nights because I'm not sleeping and I don't have anybody to help me out. I have no sort of village, no friends, no close family members around to help me. And it was a really rough time. On top of that, I fell into some pretty deep postpartum depression, which was another thing that I just wasn't really aware of. I knew it existed, but I didn't really identify it as postpartum depression really until I hit my second and third daughters. I was like, oh my gosh, that's definitely what I had with Evelyn, and how much harder that made life for me as a brand new mom. And this deployment really made me feel like I was just going through the motions of existing, of being her mom and being a military spouse, and like going to Target once a day because I had nothing else to do, or going to the park, or doing all these things, and really just feeling like I had no real motivation, no real purpose. I didn't have a toddler around that I was teaching ABCs or doing sensory learning and things like that, or building, the sensory bins and stuff like that I was used to doing as a preschool teacher and as an educator. And so she wasn't there at that stage yet. She's just kind of this like blob that just exists everywhere I go. And so I felt like my day was just filled with emptiness. And I felt that inside, and I felt like I was losing my identity. And that's really what made me start to think I need something more than just I need something during the day that makes me feel productive, that I have to look forward to, or else I am going to spiral even more. And so at that point, that's when I started my first blog page, post, website, whatever you want to call it, called Barefoot and Boots. And I would just write about my daily struggles, really not for anybody else, but really for me to write about my daily life as a mom. I would start writing recipes. I started to do child development activities that parents could utilize, because I really just felt like if I was doing something that I felt like I could push out to the world, not making any money, not doing it for an income, but that I felt like, oh, I could write about this. It just shifted my brain to be like, now I'm doing something productive, even though I wasn't financially gaining from it. It wasn't a job. It wasn't a career. But it was my first mindset shift. And then I started doing some freelance writing for different publications. So I started to do the blog writing. Then I decided to look and see if I could really get some of my work out there. And so I started writing for free. It really I was not being paid for it. And then was getting paid like $30 an article, like chump change, right? Wasn't making a difference for our family really financially, but it just made me feel productive, made me feel like I was worth something, which sounds awful. And when you say that out loud, but coming from the millennial time period of how I grew up, being an Enneagram 3 who thrives on productivity and tasks being checked off my list, those two things combined, where I'm a millennial and productivity defines your worth, and being an Enneagram 3, not having these tasks for productivity really made me feel like I was worthless. Not in a shouldn't exist type of way, but really what is my purpose and why? I'm just going through the motions here. And at the beginning, I had quite a lot of pushback from my husband, because he really had seen, he really wanted me to be a stay-at-home mom from the beginning. That's what he wanted. He didn't have an opportunity to have that for his family. He came from a very, very poor background. His mom supported his entire family on a waitress salary, if you could even call it a salary. And he really said, I have the opportunity to provide for you. I want you to be home with the kids. And so between that and then me not feeling like I had this purpose, I really was like, I need to find a way to marry the two things. I want to be able to be home with my kids. Financially, it doesn't make sense for me to put them in daycare anyways if I was going to be a teacher. But also, I want to be home with my kids. It's what we agreed upon as a new couple. And it's what I find to be important, to be home with my kids and not send them off to daycare. But I also need to find something productive. So how can I do that? That's when writing started to come out. And then from there, I started to learn skills to become a virtual assistant. And that's kind of how that path kind of started. So I started out, like I said, as a freelance writer. In between then, I was writing occasionally. I was doing some VA work, sort of. It wasn't really even defined as virtual assistant yet, but I was doing a lot of writing. In between then, of course, we PCS'd to Virginia. I had two more babies while my husband was an instructor at the basic school, so he was never home. And again, fell into that routine of being mom and postpartum depression and all of those things. But at the same time, I really had already identified that I needed something more than just being mom and doing the daily mom stuff. I needed something that was productive. So, in order to marry those two things, like I said, I started a preschool from home. My oldest daughter, Evelyn, at the time was about 2 years old when we moved to Virginia. She was my only daughter at the time. I started a preschool, and that preschool continued to go on for the next 3 years when I had two more babies. And we finally closed it after I had my third because it was just too much, two babies in 2 years and all of the things. And we were getting ready to PCS. But I did that and I had the preschool and I felt that was my first like real business. And it was such a great feeling to have something every couple days and then eventually every single day that I was doing, that not only was I home with my daughter and doing school with her, but I also was being productive and building this business that I knew wasn't going to like grow into this great big empire, but really was something that it was for me, utilizing my degree. So I felt good doing that. But at the same time, it was a huge discussion with my husband. I remember driving to Wegmans, if you guys have a Wegmans by you, driving to Wegmans down in Fredericksburg with my family, with my husband, and I think it was just my daughter and my oldest and my middle. I don't think we had our youngest yet. And talking to my husband about lesson plans and being like, oh, I really would like to pick up these couple of things from the dollar store. And like, this is what I'm thinking about doing. And I'm going to need to take some time to work on these, materials. Could you, if you are not doing anything, maybe you can watch the kids while I work on this stuff. And he got really frustrated. And he was like, this is not supposed to take away from family time. And you're taking time for your business, you're doing stuff outside the hours of your business. And then I got really angry because I was like, listen, man, like I'm building something here. I'm working, I'm bringing income into the family. This makes me feel good. Why are you pushing it down? And it was this big struggle. And I've talked about this before on one of our other earlier podcast episodes of the discussion you have to have when you do have that marriage between being stay-at-home mom and a working parent. You're working from home, because you do, as much as you want to say, oh, it's not taking time away from my family, it is, because your mental capacity is on work stuff. You're taking hours that you normally might be doing something else for the family to focus on your business. But it was a discussion. I remember like being like, we need to sit down and talk about this, because I think you need to understand the value that this is for me, that this is not just let me get away from the family. Like, one, I'm with my kids, and two, this is really important to me, and here's all the reasons why. And from that point, he really understood why I needed the identity outside of mom and military spouse. Before that, I think he felt kind of like it was more important for me to have some sort of outside identity. And there is that guilt about that, right? Like, why isn't being a mom enough for you? I've heard that more than once, not directed just to me, but just in general. Why is being a mom not enough for you? Even other moms will say that, like, why can't you just be a stay-at-home mom? And why do you have to say the word just, like just a stay-at-home mom? I do understand being a stay-at-home mom, and I do understand the value in it. But I think for some of us, and again, it's not everybody, like some people like to work outside the home and could never work from home, or could never be a stay-at-home mom. We all have our different reasons for things. But for me, having this self-identity outside of being just so-and-so's mom and just so-and-so's wife was very valuable to me, and gives me a lot of personal affirmation to have this identity outside of being just mom and just military spouse. And I think that's really important for some people. And for those of us who are in this military lifestyle, already having to give up so much, oftentimes our careers, our friends, everything that we know, to follow our spouse to every duty station that they go to, that when you are also turned around and said, hey, you've got to give up your personal identity too, because now you're his his or her spouse, and you're also this, if you're a parent, you're also this person's parent, and the expectation to just be those things and not to work, which has changed quite a bit in a few years. But when I was a brand new military spouse, very few people worked outside the home. Um, there is this unspoken expectation that you have this availability to be present as the dependent, as the spouse. If a kid is sick, you're the one home with them. If something's going on with trainings or deployments and you guys have a crazy schedule, you've got to change your schedule around to meet the needs of your family. That is just blanket. You are the primary caretaker. You are the family member. No matter if you are male or female, husband or wife in this scenario, you are second in place to the needs of the military. That's just how it goes, right? And so for me, I realized that if I had something for me, that would make me not resent having given up so much. And I think a lot of military spouses can identify with that. Not everyone, maybe. Like I'm not saying every single one identifies with that, but for me personally, I definitely identified with that. Okay, so let's kind of move on beyond, the guilt we feel being more than, making the decision to pursue something outside of just being moms. And I know this episode really is focused on motherhood because that really takes a huge part of plays a huge part in our decision to work from home for many of us, is because we want the stability to be home with the kids. That's not for, not every military spouse has kids and or wants kids. And so if you are listening to this and you don't have kids, and maybe you feel like it doesn't completely apply to you, but I still think the idea of like not having our own personal identity, because now we've lost our careers, we've lost our family, we don't live close to anything we know, we've lost that connection with people we're close with because of constantly having to move. I think we can all identify with that, and that guilt of, or not that guilt, but that resentment of I've given up so much and I can't even find a job, which is what led me to looking for something that was PCS friendly, remote, flexible, and that I could do from home with my kids. And that led me to becoming a virtual assistant. So I started off, like I said, as a freelance writer, but then I started to do some VA work. And I've talked about my story before. So if you want to hear the details of it more, you can go listen to one of those other podcast episodes. I don't want to bore everybody with like exactly how life went, but just to give you the TLDR, too long, don't read, right? Yeah, TLDR. I don't know if that's what the kids say. Just to give you that kind of background on it. Started off as a freelance writer. Did my preschool from home for a couple of years. Once I closed that down and we PCS'd, I started to freelance write even more. I started to work for a publication called Daily Mom. This is where I really honed in all of my VA skills. I started to work for the editor as a virtual assistant, writing her content, doing her social stuff, doing some of her, travel scheduling and editing her photos. Ton of things that I learned on the back end of building a digital business. And this is really where my VA stuff kind of took off. From there, COVID happened. We PCS'd again, and then I got a position with a very well-known military magazine as a digital editor. Long story with that one. I think I just did a podcast episode on that about me getting laid off from that position, or really technically fired, and what that was like for me. And that experience, sort of. I had to sign an NDA with it, which tells you that it was not a good situation. Or I didn't have to. I was asked to, and I agreed stupidly to sign an NDA for that. And so I can't go into all the details of it. But from there, I became a virtual assistant for a agency called Jennifer Allwood's Businessist. And this is where I was like, you know what? I think I could make this into something. So I did that for about a year. And then I started my own company, Aura Digital Consulting, in 2022. And we've been growing exponentially for the past 3 years. And it inspired me to start the Work from Home Milspo, because being a VA, being a freelance writer was great. It's also flexible, can do it with your kids, work on your own schedule, can PCS with it, but it was not stable. Some months I'd have a ton of articles. Some months I would have one or none. And it took a lot out of me to find publications to write for, get ideas, write the content, do all of that. And I really was just like, you know what? I don't know if this is what I want to be doing. So as I honed in those VA skills and I saw how much potential for growth there was as a virtual assistant, not just being a VA, but really kind of helping to build businesses, I thought to myself, this is so great. This is definitely what I want to pursue. And then about like maybe 6 months later, I was like, I could teach other military spouses how to do this because this is a perfect career that is flexible, remote. You can do it from home. You don't need a special degree. You don't need childcare. It literally meets all of the things that you see on those Facebook groups of people looking for job opportunities or remote work. And they're saying they want all of these things checked off their list. It meets pretty much all of them except for maybe a salary, a base salary, which because of course, as a virtual assistant, you're a contractor. So your income can vary from month to month or depending on if you work for an agency, but it really does meet all the needs of what you're looking for as a military spouse and as a virtual assistant. I mean, as a military spouse looking for remote work. I'm sorry. So once I kind of identified that as being like the thing I should be doing, I really took it and ran with it. And this has helped me so much over the years to not resent being a military spouse. So, I've grown this career, I've grown this business. I now have virtual assistants that work for me who are all military spouses, and I can see the potential and how amazing this career opportunity can be for a military spouse. But I think, and one of the other episodes we talk about too, how the military is not meeting military spouses where they're at. These job opportunities that are out there, no matter what they are, they need to meet us where we're at as military spouses. That's kind of a whole nother topic. But having these remote work opportunities, like being a virtual assistant, really can help you as a military spouse enjoy military life a heck of a lot more. Let me explain what I mean by that. So when you're a military spouse and you've given up all of these things, you've given up your career, you've given up living near family and everything you've ever known, you've given up every comfort you could possibly have, your furniture is broken, you live in a house that doesn't really fit your family, you live in a place that you may or may not like, you have to get new friends every time, find new hairstylists, dentists, find new doctors, all of these things that we do every single time we move, every couple of years. That takes a huge toll on us as a person, right? As a family, and then you as a person. It takes a huge toll on you. And at first, you might not even realize it. In fact, I didn't realize it probably until about year 15 or so when we made this move to Japan. I really was just like, oh, this is just life. Like, this is just what we do. We move, we pack up, we do all these things, whatever, it's just life. But as I got a little bit older, my kids got older, it became more apparent how hard it can be to leave friends behind, and you get tired of all the BS, the bureaucracy, you know what the red tape is, and you are, fighting against the man to make it make sense. You start to be like, you know what, this is kind of like BS. Like, why am I doing this year after year? And especially when you're in an era of peacetime and not in a war fighting era. I'm one of the military spouses that was in the thick of it with wartime and then transitioned to peacetime, where some of you may have come into this life where we were not in an active war and you're in a peacetime era. It's a lot easier to put up with military life when you can see that it's for the greater good. But when you are in this peacetime era, you start to see all the things that are wrong with it, and you'd be like, why am I even doing this? Like, I can't even have a job. I don't have my own identity. I'm just like floating along behind him or her while we make all these moves for their career, and I have nothing. And so if you are feeling that this way, then it may be a point for you to find something for yourself that is personally fulfilling, whether it's a career or a volunteer opportunity within your own base location, or maybe even broader with a nonprofit organization that's, military based, civilian based, whatever it is. But it is, I think, so valuable to have something for you as a military spouse that gives you your own identity and gives you your own purpose outside of following this person to every duty station that they're being sent to. And I myself found that to be really valuable when I started working as a virtual assistant, when I started my career this way, because I was finally doing something for me. I was finally doing something that made me feel productive, that put me out in the world as something more than just the chick that's following this guy around. I was myself. And it has helped me to value military life so much more. I do not sit there and resent that we've had to move 18 times. That's not how many times we've moved. I don't even know. 6 times? I don't know how many times we've moved. I don't resent having to move all the time. I don't resent having to PCS Oconus. I don't resent changing our house and our furniture and all those things. Like, yes, I feel those things, right? Like, it's exhausting, it's hard, it's difficult, it's a pain in the butt. But I don't resent military life for it. What I mean by that is that I could, especially if I had a traditional job that didn't allow, if I was a teacher, for example, still, or I had another type of career that wasn't flexible and remote and Oconus friendly, I probably would resent all military life because I am a person who wants something outside for myself. And if I wasn't able to find that as being a virtual assistant and the career I've built with this, the business I built with this, I would look at military life and be like, this is such bullshit. Like, excuse my language, but this is such bullshit. Like, I cannot hold a job. I can't have a career. I am like wasting away 20 years of my life while the military tells us everything that we have to do. And that makes for a resentful person, right? So having this career has helped me to not feel that way. I am happy. I am a moto military spouse, as they say. My brand is based on military spouses. I wear his sweatshirts and all his stuff. Like, I love military life. I love the opportunities that we've had. I've been able to see the positives of living in a place that maybe I don't really like that much. We've been able to travel. We've been able to do all these things that I otherwise wouldn't be able to do if we weren't a military spouse, or I probably wouldn't have done if I wasn't a military spouse, if we didn't live this military lifestyle. So I'm able to look at the positives because the thing that made me feel negative about, I was able to find something for myself to take place of that, to be that thing that I identify with outside of being a military spouse. And I think that's really, really valuable. Something that I talk about a lot as a military spouse, or as someone who is an advocate for military spouse employment that meets the needs of military spouses, not just remote employment or employment in general, but employment that is actually flexible, PCS friendly, remote, without the need for childcare or a special degree. That type of employment, that type of career, I'm such a big advocate for it because I truly believe it helps with military service member retainment. When you have a spouse who is at home and happy and okay with military life, your service members are more likely to stay. When you have a spouse that says, I hate everything about this, I am counting down the days until you get out, you're going to have a service member that might say, you know what, this isn't worth it anymore. I'm dropping papers, or I'm EASing early. I'm ending my contract. Like, that's more likely if you have a family that says, I hate this. But when you have a family that says, you know what, we've got this, we're fine, then you're going to keep those good service members. I also think it helps with military family mental health. So when you have a spouse who's able to work in a way that fits her family's needs, then you have somebody who's much happier. If you have a spouse who is able to, even work outside the home or do something that they find valuable, you're going to have a much happier military family. Not only the spouse, the dependent, or that dependent, the spouse, but also the dependents within the home and the service member. Because if they come home to a place that's volatile and angry and frustrated all the time, they're going to feel volatile and angry and frustrated, and then they're going to take it out on the people around them, whether it's their subordinates or, whatever their infrastructure looks like in their office. And so I think it really helps with military mental health, which again talks about military service member retainment, but mental health in general. Also, obviously, it helps with financial and food insecurities that many military families face. I think sometimes we are so ingrained with the idea that our junior enlisted families are on things like WIC and food stamps. Like, we don't even really sometimes think twice. And by we, I mean the overarching military community. We just know that it's a struggle for junior enlisted to afford basic things, that when you tell a civilian that, they're like completely baffled that you have military service members on WIC or on food stamps. And we have to establish food pantries on base so people can get free groceries, right? Like, that's crazy to me that we are the people who are sacrificing the most for the country can't even pay for basic things. So when you have a spouse who's able to work that meets the needs of their family and doesn't take away other resources, doesn't require them to pay for childcare, doesn't require them to have a second car or pay for gas, doesn't require them to pay for school to get a degree, and you can offer them this type of career path, you can combat the financial and food insecurities, and you can combat the mental health issues and the service member retainment. It like is like this magical box of opportunity that really helps meet the needs of the military community and the military family. And whether it's being a virtual assistant or it's some other sort of career that kind of meets all those boxes, or just meets the needs of that particular family. The person wants to work outside the home, awesome. They want to be volunteers, awesome. I just highly encourage that as a military spouse, if you feel like your identity is being lost, like you are just a mom or a parent, and you're just a military spouse and you are spiraling and resenting military life, that maybe it's time for you to look for something for yourself. And what I talked about this at the Okinawa Leadership Seminar last fall. What my particular talk was on was that, in overarching, the military is not going to hand you an opportunity. They're not. You're looking for a job. They might have these programs out there that will give you, like job fairs and stuff like that. Well, they will tell you that these jobs exist out in the world, but they're not literally going to go to you and say, here you go. You have to do the work to get that, to find that happiness, to do those, to find that career, find that job, to find what makes you happy, whether it's volunteering or a work from home job or, in the office job, whatever that looks like for you, you have to do that. In the military, you are not, they're not going to do that for you. I don't want to say you're not that important, but in the grand scheme of things, they're not thinking about your particular family at all. And so you really have to do the work to make this military life as best as you can for you, because most of us, or not most of us, many of us stay for more than 10 years. A lot of us stay for 20. Some of us stay for beyond that. So if you wait until your service member is out of the military to then start looking for what makes you happy, you've wasted a lot of good years of your life. It's important that you look for those things now versus 5, 10, or 4, I guess, 4, 10, 15, 20, 25 years down the road. And then you're like, oh, I guess maybe I should do something for me. Make your life what you want it now, whatever that looks like for you. And you will have such a better time living this military lifestyle, which is so much more difficult than any civilian lifestyle. Not any, but most civilian lifestyles. So much more difficult than most civilian lifestyles. We don't even realize it on a daily basis. We don't even realize how much stuff we go through as military families because it's just so normal for us that if you compare it to a civilian, you'd be like, what the heck am I doing here? Or they'd be like, you guys are nuts. How do you live your life like that? You have to find this happiness. And I strongly encourage you, if you are in a place where you're like, I want something that's, I want a career, but I really can't do it outside the home, really look into something like being a VA. Even if it's not a marketing one, maybe it's more of an admin one. I think it really packages everything so nicely, the things that most of us military spouses are looking for. So it's my favorite thing, obviously, but I really think it will help you find your personal and professional identity outside of being just so-and-so's mom or parent and just so-and-so's wife or husband. And if this is something you think you might be interested in, there's a link down in our show notes that will take you to our more information about our courses and our cohorts. Depending on when you're watching this will depend on what you're going to be watching, either a cohort video or maybe a webinar. and give you some more information about our courses that teach you how to become a virtual marketing assistant, because this is so valuable as a military spouse to have a career opportunity that is PCS friendly, remote, flexible, without the need for childcare or special degree. Again, I hope you guys enjoyed my little rambling session. I got a little bit passionate there at the end, but I hope you guys enjoyed this and maybe got some encouragement into really taking this military life and making it your own, because it's only up to you to be able to do that. Okay, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Again, my name is Lauren Lonsdale. I am the Work From Home Milspo, meeting military spouses where they're at. Have a good one. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope we gave you some valuable insight into your work from home career as a military spouse. If you haven't already, we hope you join us over at the Work From Home Milspo membership, where you will learn the skills to become a creative marketing virtual assistant, as well as have the ongoing support of military spouses just like you, live trainings from me, and resources to use for yourself or your clients. Visit us at thewfhmilspo.com, as well as our virtual assistant agency made just for students, milspovirtualsolutions.com, and give me a follow on Instagram and TikTok to get more daily tips and information on remote work for military spouses. My name is Lauren Lonsdale, and I'm here to